Hi, I'm Melissa West. I'm a therapist, teacher, and parent, and one of my own personal and professional passions is learning how to parent with heart and soul. I invite you to come with me for the next hour as we explore how to parent with heart and soul. I remember when my daughter was about 6 months old, standing at my sink looking out the window. I was holding her in my left hand. She'd been up all night, and I was exhausted, and I knew I loved being a mother, but there was a sense of there's got to be more to it than this. You know, somebody's got a clue out there that they haven't told me about how to do it in a way that engages more of me, that brings more joy. I had been a family therapist for years before then, seen lots of families and lots of kids, and I thought, I'm going to do this right. I've got this down. I've got the secret. Lo and behold, I had a child, and I realized I didn't have a clue what was going on either. So I started reading parenting books, and what I found was that the more parenting books I read, the more anxious I got. The more it felt like I'm doing it wrong and something even bigger is missing. And so I started talking to other parents, other mothers in particular, and soon found out that there was this undercurrent of hunger from mothers and fathers around a piece missing, and more I was able to name that as soul. And by soul, I don't mean it in the religious sense. What I mean is, I don't know if any of you have read the Thomas More book, Care of the Soul, or there's so many books out there now about soul. Soul in the sense of being engaged with life fully, being able to be open-hearted, passionate. It's about a quality of life rather than a thing. It's about depth, it's about values, it's about commitment, it's about joy, it's about passion. And I realized more and more that's what's missing from my life as a parent. It comes and goes, but I don't know how to practice that. And I couldn't find anything out there that helped me reclaim that and really practice it. So I thought, somebody's got to write a book about this. And it ended up being me a couple of years later. Before I talk more about what parenting with soul is about, I'd like to say a couple of things about what it isn't. I think we're given two models in this culture for what parenting is. The first model I call the manager. It's about managing ourselves as parents. It's about managing our children. It's about managing time. It's about managing schedules. It's about managing housework. It's about managing dinner, carpools, piano lessons, soccer games. You name it. It's possible in this culture, given the way we live, to spend all of our time with our children as managers. And what's missing from being a manager in this way is that it's really kind of from the neck up. Our hearts aren't engaged. When we've got to keep on top of schedules and make sure everything fits in the right place and we're all in the right place at the right time, it's almost impossible to have our hearts engaged in this. I remember one time in particular when it really first hit me, when I was with my daughter and we had come from someplace else and we were late coming from that place, and we were going on to the next place we had to be, and we were all so late for that, and I realized after that we had to get home to dinner, and I hadn't started dinner, and on and on and on, and my mind was just racing. We were at a stoplight, and all of a sudden I realized my daughter was talking to me. And she's not much of a talker, but I could tell this time she was probably saying something that was important, only I didn't have a clue what it was because I was so busy running those schedules through my head. And I remember looking at my hands on the steering wheel, and my knuckles were white. You know, I was waiting for the light to change. And fortunately, I had started to get enough of a sense of what this was about that I could remember to breathe and soften. And I noticed there was a beautiful sunset that I hadn't even noticed. And then turned to my daughter, and lo and behold, she was saying something important to me. And I was able to stop and breathe and listen to her and let go of kind of that super fast managing mode. And we had a really special time in the car there getting on to the next place. And lo and behold, we did get places and dinner did get made and all of that. But what I was given was that wonderful gift of being able to be present to my daughter and to myself in a way that I would not have been had I been in that management sort of mode. The next model I call the good parent. I think our culture tells us over and over that what we're supposed to be are good parents, good mothers, good fathers. But what they don't tell us is what they often really mean by a good parent, and I say capital G, capital P there, what they often mean by a good parent is a perfect parent. Only they're not saying that. They're saying that we should always be wise, wonderful, grounded, all of those things we're supposed to be as parents all the time. And if we're not always nurturing and compassionate and on and on and on, the only solution is to try harder. That if we just try harder, we can be all of those things all the time. I talked to a woman earlier today who said she realized she spent the last 10 years reading books and going to workshops on how to help her kids out. And she realized she had been left out of the equation entirely for 10 years. It's so easy to do. And learning to parent with soul is about including ourselves in our own hearts as well as our children. Our culture is given two models on how to parent, neither of which include much soulfulness. The first one is being a manager, managing ourselves, managing our children, managing the house, managing housework, managing schedules, managing carpools, managing soccer games, on and on and on. You know, I kind of get out of breath doing it. And it's entirely possible in this culture to spend all of our time as a manager. And what gets left out when we're being solely a manager with our children is it's like we're managing from the neck up, and what gets left out is our own hearts. You know, it's just that sense of rush, 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 fix, fix, fix. The manager is also responsible for fixing all problems. If there's a problem, we're supposed to fix it as parents. You know, so it's that sense of being vigilant all the time as well. That's the first model we're given. The second model we're given, I'm going to write this down, is that of being the good parent. Notice I capitalize G and P because this is what our culture asks us to do. You know, just be a good parent to your kids. Be a good parent. Be a good mom. Be a good dad. What they don't tell us a whole lot of the time is, you know what good really means? It means perfect. Be a perfect parent. We always have to be, it's kind of like the Boy Scouts, loyal, kind, considerate, faithful, true, honest, on and on and on and on. And as parents, we're supposed to be all of those things all of the time. And what they don't tell us is that if we're not a good parent, you know what the only other option is? Being a bad parent. And that there's not a whole lot of in between. You know, there's this good parent over here, and then there's this bad parent hole. And if I make any mistakes, if I slip up at all, I automatically fall into that bad parent hole. And the only way I can crawl out of that bad parent hole is to be perfect. Well, if any of you are like me, being perfect is really hard work. And if I get there, I only manage to stay there for a couple of seconds before I slip back into the bad parent hole. And it's pretty discouraging stuff. And that's really, you know, not everybody is saying that, but that's certainly a big picture of what our culture gives us as far as how to be parents. That what happens when we're struggling to be a good parent is that voice gets inside our head. A lot of you may have heard of kind of internal critics or internal judges. It's like that good parent or that good mother is inside our head going, yak, 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 yak. And I read a selection from my journal last night where I was just so tired. It was a time I'd been up all night with my daughter and going, you know, those nights when you're going back and forth from their room all night, and it finally dawn hits and you realize you have to stay up for the whole rest of the day and they're still sick and you don't get a chance, and there was that sense of you saying, I don't know if I can do this. And it was amazing that good mother voice came up and said, well, maybe you're not a good mother. You know, if I were doing this, I would love to be up all night with my daughter. I'd love to give to her. I'd relish this opportunity, you know, and there I was just feeling about yay high. And it was so amazing to find out that she was doing that all the time in my head. And most of us, I think, have this good parent who's always judging us, always. And I think a really important part of this is starting to become conscious of it, because then we have choices. And again, what gets left out of this equation is our own hearts. That if I've got this model for being a perfect parent and I'm having to measure up to it all the time, which essentially means that I'm never measuring up to it, I can't be compassionate towards myself. I can't allow myself in my own heart if I'm being a bad parent. You know, it's like bam, 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 bam. And if I'm shutting myself out of my own heart, it's very, very hard to allow my child in as well. Once I start shutting myself out of my own heart, everyone else gets shut out as well. And so what happens with these two models, the manager and the good parent, is that we spend a whole lot of times being shut out of our hearts and therefore not being able to give our children kind of heartful, soulful attention as well. So what I'd like you to do is to find 3 other people around you, to get in groups of 4. And what I'm going to have you do is brainstorm. Another way you can tell a good parent message is that there's always underlined or never involved in the message. A good parent never is late. A good parent always has a spotless house. A good parent never frowns. You know, that sense of always or never. So, and you can also change it if you want. You can play with a good mother and a good father, because sometimes additional things come up there as well. So what I'd like you to do with this little group, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to brainstorm as many of these good parent messages, a good parent always, a good parent never. And some of them are going to sound real funny when they come out. A good parent never burns the toast. You know, it's going to sound silly, but it's important to write them down. See how many you can come up with, and then we're going to get back in the larger group and see what y'all have.
That's right. Sweatpants and no shower day. That's not good mom. Putting on your makeup. Never get sick.
So, it's open. Throw some stuff out. Yeah.
This is one I say to myself all the time. A good mother always feels fulfilled by motherhood and never looks either forward or back to the days when her kids weren't home.
Okay, so wait. A good parent always feels fulfilled.
No, completely.
Oh, completely. We'll put that in caps there. Completely
Fulfilled by motherhood.
fulfilled by, I'm going to put parenthood just because they're, and never regrets having children? Is that
And
kind of?
never, well, it never either looks, forward to the days when her children either will be grow up and
Which is that never,
or backwards to the days when she didn't have her kids.
so never contemplates being childless. In whatever form that is. Okay, what else? Yeah.
A good parent never makes mistakes.
Ah, never makes mistakes. Okay.
The house is always clean, immaculately, and well arranged.
Okay.
It's perfect.
Always has an immaculate,
Better homes and gardens house.
immaculate, perfect house. Yeah, you notice it's not just about being clean, it's like immaculate. Okay.
It always has the right answer
Ah,
and never puts themselves first.
okay. Never. The last bit was interesting. 2 were right back to back, and it was a good parent always, it was something around, spends all of their time focusing on their children, and the very next one was, a good parent always takes time for themselves. It's like, how do you do both? What else?
Always has their kids to school on time, or anywhere they need to be on time. They're always on time. Forever.
Has kids to places on time. But I want you to imagine right now, say someone is giving you a job description. This is a new job that you're going to have, and it's titled A Good Parent. And what they're going to give you is a rough overview of it, but let you know there's about 10 pages of fine print also that we just don't have time to get into, but that it's very, very important to always fulfill the job description, or you're going to get a terrible, terrible job review. Terrible job review. Okay? So here you are considering taking on this job. And what I'd like you to do is just go inside. You can close your eyes or not. As I read this to you, and think about what it's like to consider saying yes to this job, and notice how your body and your heart respond to this job description.
That relaxation you made us do is over.
Just try it. Okay, you ready? Just notice how your body and soul respond to this job description. A good parent always feels completely fulfilled by parenthood. A good parent always has polite, well-behaved children. A good parent always boosts their kids' self-esteem. A good parent always has lots of money. A good parent always listens to their kids. A good parent always has an immaculate, perfect house. A good parent always is the perfect athlete if they're a dad. A good parent always attends school functions. A good parent always has the right answer. A good parent always has nutritional, tasty dinners on time. A good parent always has kids to places on time. A good parent always loves being with their kids. A good parent always has them to bed right on time. And a good parent always cheerfully reads to their children in bed. A good parent never contemplates being childless. A good parent never makes mistakes. A good parent never lets their children eat junk. A good parent never loses control. A good parent never criticizes or lectures. A good parent never is tired. A good parent never is sick. A good parent never puts themselves first. A good parent never swears. And a good parent never embarrasses their kids. How do you feel? What happened?
I'm not taking the job.
Forget that job. This is our job description, you know, according to our culture and according to that parent inside our heads. Just think what it's like to parent all the time with this judge inside our heads constantly making sure that we stay on track. And like I said, there's about 15 pages of fine print that follows this. It's incredible. There's no way, if I'm following this program of having to be perfect like this, there's no way I can have room for myself in my own heart. I'm always messing up, always. So I think one of the first big steps towards soulful parenting is realizing that there is this inner critic and being able to recognize when they're speaking up. I really encourage you over the next week or so to keep writing down the messages as they come up. Chances are, whenever you feel guilty, a message has come up. When you feel bad, when your stomach tightens, I bet each of us could easily come up with 50 of these things, easily. And some of them sound so persnickety, but they're so true. So write them down. There's something terrifically freeing about being able to see them in front of you, and you look at them and go, God, that's crazy. You know, it's a whole lot easier to see that when they're written down. So the first step is really becoming aware of this good parent inside our head. The next step is, when you're aware that this is going on, stop and take a breath. It's so easy when we're stressed and when we're feeling all this to contract, literally just to start squeezing in and to stop breathing. So take a breath. That's really the first step. And then you have at least a couple of choices. I'll throw out two and you may come up with more. The first one is just to say, stop. You know, it's kind of like having a zapper, you know, and an ad comes on you don't like and you go click like that and change the channel. Just saying stop and think about something else. A second option is to start talking back to the voice. You know, this voice says, rant, rant, rant. You say, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. I don't believe you anymore. I'm finding a different way of being a parent that includes my heart and soul, and I'm not following this program anymore. There are probably all sorts of other ways as well. Just play with it and find out what works best for you. Again, this is the important first step toward letting ourselves into our own hearts and souls. It's impossible to try to be perfect all the time and be a person. I read a journal thing from my book last night that was really so true for me. I realized when I was listening to this good mother inside my head, I stopped being Melissa. You know, I started being this kind of numbed, sanitized, whitewashed, desperate version of myself. I mean, I couldn't imagine living with someone like that. You know, and there I was, not only was I having to live with that person, my daughter was as well. But that's the only option when we're listening to all this stuff. And I really do believe that the greatest gift we can give to ourselves and our children is to be us, all of us, you know, all our bumps and warts and all of our gifts as well. That what that does, again, is to let ourselves into our own hearts, which allows us to let our kids in as well. And it also then models for our children what it's like to be a whole person. You know, someone was saying in the last workshop, it's amazing how early kids learn to shut themselves out of their own hearts. You know, with the schools the way they are with their culture, you know, of having to be busy all the time and perfect. And what an incredible thing we can model for them, even if we never say it, but to model a different way of being, which is about being in our own hearts, about that kind of soulful way of life. That this really is not about just doing it as a parent, it's about doing it out in the world as well. It's about living from a different place inside of us. So what does parenting with soul mean? The word that comes to mind for me over and over again is engagement. Engagement rather than management. It's engagement, it's engaging with my own self, it's engaging with my heart, my feelings, my thoughts, my experiences, and out of that comes an engagement for me with my child or my children, their hearts, their experiences, their souls. It's about a heartful connection that's simply not possible when I'm spending all my time in the management mode or trying to be a good parent. This is about giving our lives with our children that which we most hunger for, that sense of depth and life and passion and juiciness that so many of us hunger for in our lives with our children, and we know it's there. We experience times of it, it's just we don't know how to consistently reach there. I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment and think about a time when you felt connected with this way with your children, when you felt like your heart was open both to yourself and your children, and what that experience was like for you. How did it change things for you to be in your heart with your children? How was that different for you? And what would it be like to be able to engage more consistently in that way with your own children? Just think about that for a moment. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about parenting with soul. I want to be clear, I'm not talking about idiot compassion. I'm not talking about being a spineless jellyfish with our children where we just kind of roll over and let them do anything they want. It's still possible to be open-hearted and soulful when we're saying no to our children. It's possible to be open-hearted and soulful with our children when we're angry at them. It's possible to be open-hearted and soulful when it's time to do management, when it's time to discipline. It's not about leaving those pieces out. It's about the discipline and the management becoming part of something much larger and greater than those single pieces. It's about changing from good parent to good enough parent. What our children really want, I'm convinced as a therapist and a mother, is us. They don't want some numbed out, constricted, whitewashed version of who we are. They want us. They want our hearts and souls. They want us to be present with them. And as long as we're trying to be a good parent, we simply can't be present. We're trying to be something other than who we are. So this change to being a good enough parent, to letting go of that constant striving for perfectionism, to letting ourselves be human and mistake makers with our kids, I think is one of the greatest gifts, not just that we can give ourselves, but that we can give our children as well. Another way I like to think about it is parenting with roots and wings. Parenting with wings is about those times of joy, of silliness, of playfulness, of creativity that we have with our children, times when we can soar with our children. These are the times when parenting is easy and fun in the sense of, oh, this is what I'm here to do. This is really what I love doing. But with parenting, as with the rest of life, there are going to be hard times. I think of those as the root times, the times of going down, the times when things may feel dark, unknown, closed in, the times of failure as parents, the times of depression, of anxiety, of grief, of despair. All of that occurs with parenting just as it occurs in the rest of our lives. But somehow as parents, we're not supposed to feel those things. We're not supposed to have times like that. I think of times, hard times for myself as a parent, where all I wanted to do was escape the pain. It was just too much. And again, I had no model of what it was like to stay with the pain and still be a loving parent at the same time. I found that the more I was able to stay with the pain when it came up, stayed with those inevitable hard times, ironically, what happened was my capacity for joy as a parent deepened as well. When I shut out my own pain and suffering as a parent, what inevitably happens is I shut out my own joy as well. So as my capacity to stay present as a parent, no matter what was going on, deepened, my capacity I found for joy and creativity and silliness and fun and playfulness and all the stuff that makes it wonderful to be a parent was deepened as well. That was the real gift I found in all of this. I really do believe that this is the way we are meant to live with our children. This is the way we are meant to be. Only our culture doesn't give us this model. And so what it means is that we need to make a commitment to parenting with soul and a commitment to keep on doing it. You know, we'll forget about it, we come back, we fall off, we climb back on. That it really is about a process and not a product. Again, in our culture, we're taught to think in terms of products. If you do this for 21 days, you'll get there. If you take a pill, you'll get there. If you take this workshop, you'll get there. This is not about getting there in one place and staying there. It's really about a practice. And it's entirely possible to practice this way and really gain that kind of depth and joy that we all want so much with our families. I can't tell you, I'm a therapist and I see a lot of parents in my practice. I can't tell you how many parents I see over and over and over again whose children are grown, who come in and have an incredible amount of grief work to do because they realize they were never with their children. You know, they spent 20 years getting on to the next thing and the next activity and the next event, or wishing they hadn't said what they said 5 minutes ago or what they did a week ago. And they really realized in some very basic way they had never been with their children. And here their children were grown and they had lost a chance. You know, they have a second chance with grandchildren, but they'll never have that chance with their own children being small. And it's wonderful for me to hear that over and over again because I realize how much time I don't spend in the present. You know, I'm criticizing myself for something I did, or I'm on to the next event, and there's my child in front of me, and I'm not there. And that present moment with my child is all I have. It's really all I have with my child. And so often as parents, it's that sideways kind of parenting that's a chance for a soulful moment. You know, so often we think, okay, I'm going to do this soulfully. I'm going to have an intimate moment with my child. Sit down. Look into my eyes. You know, and they start getting this glazed look and start looking like, oh, Mom. Kids don't work that way. You know, it really is kind of that side-by-side stuff, carpooling, playing games. I'm doing the dishes and my daughter comes in, that are wonderful opportunities for this kind of soulful contact. But we can't do it unless we're there. It's that present moment. There's a philosopher named A.H. Almaas, and he says he considers the single most important question we can ever ask ourselves, ever, is, am I here? Am I here? Most of the time, honestly, I'd have to respond no. bad days, I could ask myself every half an hour, and maybe once during the day, I'd have a yes. And it's just the way it is. If I'm not in the present moment, I don't have choices. I'm either checked out or on some kind of automatic pilot, and chances are if I'm on automatic pilot, I'm not going to have soulful responses to things. It's going to be kind of that worst part of me that comes out. I told a story last night. My daughter was losing her best friend, this other girl that she just loved so much, was moving across the country a couple of weeks ago. And so Elise, my daughter, and Sarah, it was their last couple of days together, and Sarah was over at our house, and they were starting to get more and more rambunctious and more out of control, and they were just on the edge of like getting really out of control. And I was trying to fix dinner, and I was all like this, and I heard them, and my first response was to run into the room and say, "Shut up!" Like, be quiet. Fortunately, I remembered that I was going to come give this workshop, and I remembered that there was another way to be. And so I was able to stop and take a breath and kind of come into the present moment rather than this thing of I've got to have a clean house and quiet kids, As I breathed, what happened is new options became possible that simply weren't possible when I wasn't in the present moment, when I was on that kind of reactive mode. As I stopped and breathed and softened and came into the present moment, what I realized is that these were two 8-year-old girls in the next room who were about to lose each other, who were probably experiencing just about the biggest loss of their whole lives so far, and that they were in a lot of grief. And given that they were 8 years old, they had forgotten that. And so what they were doing with all that energy was just starting to buzz out of control. So I was able to walk into the room and say to them something around, golly, if I was one of y'all, I would be feeling so sad right now. If I was about to lose my best friend, I'd be feeling so sad that I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. And you know what happened? The whole situation shifted. They really heard me, and it was what was going on with them, and they quieted down immediately. It was amazing. Someone pointed out in the last workshop that they might not have quieted down. That's very true. It's not linear where if I do X, my children are automatically going to do Y. It is one of those times that happened, though. We all got what we needed. I got a quiet house. Those kids got heard. It was another one of those soulful moments. And even had they not quieted down, things would have changed. Again, it's not about the behavior always changing, but my relationship to the behavior. That's about soulful parenting. But that option would not have been available to me had I not been in the present moment. All of us, I really, in my experience with most parents, it's not that they don't know what to do. All of us read these books. We're all really concerned about being good parents. It's that we're not in the present moment so that we can access the information. We go on automatic pilot. If we can stop and breathe and open our own hearts, not only can we access that information we've read, but we can find our own wisdom about what to do. And quite often it's not written in any books. We know our children best. And if we can stop and go into our own hearts, quite often we can find solutions there, given that we know our children the best, that aren't in any books. And that's a terrifically empowering experience as a parent. It's wonderful. So how to do this? A couple of things. The first is to slow down. That as parents, usually our lives are so busy, they're out of control. I encourage you to think about ways to slow down at an outer level. Chances are, though, there may not be a whole lot of options for that. But what we do have control over is our inner busyness, a chance to slow down at an inner level. Remember the story I told of being at the stoplight with Eloise and, I was just racing 100 miles an hour? We always have the option of stopping and breathing and returning to the present moment. And again, having options and soulfulness that weren't possible when we were rushing ahead. The Chinese ideograph their picture symbol for busy I think is wonderful. It's 2 pictures, 2 ideographs jammed right on top of each other. The first one, this is their ideograph, their word for busy. The first one, the top one, is heart. The bottom one is killing, heart killing. That's their word for busy. Imagine if that was our word for busy in this culture, how it would change things. When we're that busy, there's no way to be in our own heart. And again, there's no way of letting our children in as well. Another way is to, well, as far as the busyness thing, waking up earlier in the morning. Even, I know it's hard to give up sleep, but even if you can wake up 20 minutes earlier in the morning and give those 20 minutes to yourself as soul time, of connecting with yourself at some really deep level. For me, it's just waking up and having a cup of coffee and having a soulful experience of being able to wake up slowly, which is one of the best gifts I can give myself. For others of you, it might be a spiritual practice. For others, it might be reading or just watching the sunrise. Whatever gives your life that sense of depth and soul. I find that if I can do that, even for 15 minutes first thing in the morning, it changes my experience during the day. It really helps me to slow down. Another is to give myself breathing breaks. You know, just being able, I've been paring it down all day. You know, it's even if what I can do is stop and take 3 deep breaths. See what one does. Just taking 3 deep breaths. It probably takes 15 seconds. It brings me back to the present moment. It slows me down. I tell parents who are home with kids, even if you can run to the bathroom, lock the door, give yourself 15 seconds, go to the sink, splash your face with water, and breathe for 10 seconds. It's amazing how that can change your relationship both to yourself and your kids. That slowing down is so important. I think something also wonderful to do as well is what I call a mindfulness game. It's really important to approach this playfully and lightly, and not as a way to criticize ourselves, but to take even 3 minutes, you know, pick a small amount of time where you're going to be with your kids, and it doesn't need to be anything important, you know, it can be a carpool or whatever, or playing a game with them, where for those 3 minutes, what you do is keep coming back to the present moment. And the present moment means being able to breathe, being aware of what I'm feeling and thinking, and also being aware of my kids as well. What will probably happen, what happens with me quite often is I say, okay, for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to be present, I'm going to be mindful. And immediately I'm gone. I mean, there's not even a breath in between. And I go, oh yeah, and I come back. This is where it's important to do it softly and playfully, and not use it as another stick to beat ourselves with. I wasn't there, you know, I'm a bad parent. To be able to go, oh yeah, okay, come back, take a breath. What you may find, particularly on bad days, is that you spend the entire 3 minutes coming back. You know, you may spend a nanosecond actually there in the present moment with yourself and your child, and you spend 3 minutes minus a nanosecond being gone and coming back. That is great. It really is. It's not, this whole thing of parenting with soul is not about being in a perfect, blissed out, open-hearted, wonderful space with your kids. You know, please don't take that away. It's really about a practice and a process. It's not about getting to this wonderful country where you're going to be in nirvana for the rest of your life. It's about remembering this stuff and being able to come back. You know, and I write in my book that there are days where the best I can do is even remember once, oh yes, and come back, even if it's for a split second. Yeah.
You know, one of the things I was going to say that has really helped me, and this has just really kind of naturally evolved over the last year, is that this idea of being in the future or being in the past are both very important things. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's important to recognize that, because processing the things that have occurred already and planning for the future are 2 very important aspects of your life, and you need time to do those things. And one of the things that I have done that's really helped me is I use that time in the morning to write in my journal. That's like my way of processing my past, and to think about my day.
That's great.
The night before, and lay out the kids' clothes, or think about, is my carpooling really going to work tomorrow? And if it isn't, then I try to do what I can to make it work as, flowingly as possible. And I think that allows you to be more present.
Yes,
more
and
of the time.
and what you're saying is really important. Did everybody hear what she said there? That she's doing this consciously. She's writing in her journal and consciously giving herself time to think about the past, whether it was 5 minutes ago or 40 years ago, and to be with it. It's like she's being present with her past. Or to be in the future. What about the carpool? Consciously being in the future. And that is wonderful. That's really important. I'm glad you said that. It's not about never being in the past or the future, but it's when we're doing it consciously. Because what happens for us as parents is that we spend most of the time in the past or the future unconsciously, where we're really not anywhere. Our bodies are here. We're kind of in the past, but we're not even conscious we're in the past, or we're in the future, but we're not even conscious we're in the future, so we're never really any one place. So the importance of being in the past or being in the future and being conscious of it. I have to smile because it reminds me of a wonderful Zen story. There was a Zen teacher who always said, so this is a good parent story too, when you eat, simply eat. When you read, simply read. Just be with whatever you're... And he would say this over and over again. When you eat, eat. When you read, read. And there is all of his students over all these years going, okay, eat, eat, read, read. Lo and behold, some of his students came in at a meditation retreat one morning, and there was their Roshi, their teacher, eating and reading. It's like, aha! And they kind of went up to him and said, Roshi, here you are, eating and reading. And he looked up at them with this wonderful grin on his face and said, when you're eating and reading, simply eat and read. And again, this parenting thing would be so easy if we only, like things like Zen, it sounds so easy. Just do one thing in front of you. But as parents, we're multitasking all of the time. I mean, it'd be incredible if we only had one thing at a time to do with our children. That'd be easy. Usually it's at least 10 or 15 things, and what happens is we get fried and we leave the present moment. And I think about that Roshi saying, when you're eating and reading, just eat and read. When we're feeling overwhelmed, there was a woman in here at the last session that was saying, I start feeling so overwhelmed when I've got 80 billion things to do, and I'm gone. What do I do? How do I take care of all of those? And I said that soulful parenting isn't necessarily about taking care of all of those. She said, my kids have the stereo up way too loud, the kitchen's a wreck, I'm having to get dinner, on and on. How do I take care of all of them? And I said, soulful parenting isn't necessarily about taking care of all of that, but what happens when we're in that situation, which all of us are, a lot of the time as parents, when we're overwhelmed like that and don't want to be there, what we tend to do is just check out, go. And then we don't have any options. We simply don't have any. The second thing we tend to do is if we're there, is we're criticizing ourselves for not loving it all, getting back to that thing. And what a different shift it would be, and this is what soulful parenting is about, is if I'm feeling totally despairing of being a parent, if I'm feeling totally overwhelmed, to be with that. Just to allow myself to feel my despair, to feel my overwhelm, and not shut myself out of my heart because I'm feeling those things. That if I can let myself into my heart when I'm feeling totally at the end of my rope as a parent, if I can find room for me in my own heart, then everything changes. It doesn't necessarily mean all the things are going to get done, but they weren't going to get done anyway. But ironically, my best chance of getting done what I need to get done is to let myself into my own heart, even when I'm feeling despairing and overwhelmed. Does that make sense? It's that shutting ourselves out that shuts ourselves out of our own souls as well. So getting back to the mindfulness thing, being able to come back and come back and come back. That really is what it's about. And I think you'll find if you play with that, that it gives an additional depth and juiciness to your life with your kids, even if you try it for 2 minutes. Just, again, play with it lightly. If we have our hearts closed to ourselves, we can't open them to anyone else. I think I wanted to, I'm going to read, just see. Open-heartedness does not mean idiot compassion, that sense of letting our children walk all over us. I love that term. Well, I'll read the selection and I'll say more. This is a selection I wrote after I was kind of getting all this and what open-hearted really meant. Hearts were not meant to live in such tight and constricted spaces as the one I had created for my own. Hearts were meant to be big as trees, oceans, skies, worlds. How much energy we use to guard our hearts. This energy, when released from defense work, can be channeled into more life-giving ways of both being mother and woman, for being open to new ways of touching and being touched by our children and the world around us. How immensely freeing to say no longer to life, yes, but now simply, yes. When we close our hearts and hunker down, there is no space inside us for anything or anyone. We cannot selectively open the gates. We bar not only our own pain, our own anger, but also our own joys and celebrations. There is no room either for our own children with their ups and downs. When I resist myself, I resist Eloise, my daughter. When I shut myself out of my own heart, my child is also left out in the cold. As I learn to cultivate gentleness and compassion, an open heart toward myself and whatever I am experiencing, then I can let in my daughter, too, make room for her, no matter how she is feeling or behaving. Opening our hearts to our children does not always mean hugs and kisses. It can mean giving them loving space if that is what they need. It can mean saying no firmly to them and sticking with it. Opening our hearts can mean letting our children make their own mistakes and learn from them. Opening our hearts to our children with no conditions does not mean we will always say yes to what they do. It does mean that we will, to the best of our abilities, say yes to who they are. And I think that's the way it is for ourselves, our own relationship to ourselves as well. I was beginning to understand that to open my heart was always a choice for me, moment by moment. Each time I did open my heart, I was healed, as mother and as woman, a little bit more. I had a choice always, whether to contract into my old, small self or expand into the now, into grace, into new possibilities. A tight and constricted heart or a spacious one. The choice was and is always mine.
Everybody in Missoula is contributing to trying to clean up the airshed, and I think that's a really good point. While we're doing this, one of the largest corporations...
Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Soften your belly. Feel your feet on the floor. Let your breathing come from a deep, soft place in your own belly. So many cultures other than ours consider the belly the seat of the heart. I like to think of our bellies as our second hearts. So let this second heart soften, open, and let your breathing come up from that place. And now bring your awareness up into your own heart. Let it soften. And acknowledging yourself as a mother or father, open your heart now to yourself as a parent, as a human being, as a mistake maker, as a soulful parent. Open your heart to yourself. And repeat to yourself in your own heart, may there be room for me as a parent in my own heart. May there be room for me in my own heart. Allow yourself as parent to soften and receive this compassion. May I be healed as a parent into my own soul. May there be room for me in my own heart. Allow mercy and compassion for yourself as a parent to fill your heart. It's so easy for us as parents to shut ourselves out of our own hearts. So easy. May there be room for me in my own heart. May I experience compassion and mercy and grace for myself as a parent. When hard thoughts or judgments come in, breathe. Simply notice them. There's nothing you need to do with them. Soften around them and return to your own heart. May I, as a parent, be healed into my own heart. How unkind we are to ourselves as parents. How little mercy and compassion we really show ourselves. Let it go now, just for a moment, and let yourself into your own heart. Allow softness in towards yourself. Allow mercy in. Allow grace in. Let yourself be loved. May there be room for me as parent in my own heart. May there be room for my children in my own heart. May there be room for my children in my own heart. Notice how much more room there is for your children in your heart when there is room for yourself as well. May there be room for my children in my own heart. May there be room for myself as parent. May there be softness for myself as parent. May there be compassion and mercy for myself as parent in my own heart. And now I'd like you to remember a recent difficult time you had with your children. A particular situation, first one that comes to mind, where you hit the skids with your kids. And what I'd like you to do briefly is to replay that time. Just let it go by as a movie, watch it. Notice what you do and say. Notice what your kids do and say. Just simply watch what happened. And now come back to your heart. Soften your heart once more to yourself as a parent. Breathe from that soft belly. And open your own heart to yourself as a parent. What I would like you to do in a moment is to go back and replay that situation one more time with one difference, and that is to keep yourself in your heart as you watch, to extend softness and mercy and compassion to yourself as a parent as you replay the situation. What you may find as you do this is the situation changes. It plays itself out differently. I don't want you to deliberately do this to think of different things to do or say. Simply to watch the situation unfold again, but this time extending softness and compassion and mercy to yourself as a parent in a difficult situation with your kids. And notice how the situation plays itself out. Let it happen now. Keep breathing. Keep your heart soft. Let there be space for you in your own heart as you watch the situation replay. Notice what happens. Notice what it's like to be in a hard place with your kids, with room for yourself in your own heart and soul. Notice the difference it makes. And when you're ready, allow yourself very slowly and gently to return to the room and to present time.
Well, obviously, the worker compensation situation in Montana has finally brought to light the serious travesty that's gone on for far too long in not only in Montana but in the country in general.